Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for scheduling this hearing. I look forward to the testimony from our witnesses, and I want to thank you for your incredible leadership. It has been an honor to serve alongside of you, and as well as with my friend Congressman Swazi of New York. I've really admired your style and your commitment to the human rights of the Chinese people. You know, today we take stock of the changes in China and the evolution of international law in the 2 decades since the CECC was established. Our intent is not to look back, but to plan for the future by assessing our work amidst a changing landscape. Xi Jinping will continue to lead a government that employs the newest tools to suppress dissenting viewpoints, impose social control, and repress critics domestically and across borders. We want to make sure that the Commission is properly equipped and oriented to fulfill its mandate and to serve our constituents, the Congress, the executive branch, the China human rights community, and most important of all, the people of China. Chinese, Tibetans, Uyghurs, Southern Mongolians, Hong Kongers, and all others who live in the PRC deserve to have their rights and dignity respected. Human rights are inherent to all human beings, as enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and protected by the covenants and agreements that have flowed from it. The Chinese Communist Party would have us believe that some rights count more than others, citing Chinese values to discount certain civil and political rights. Some in the United States also believe that some rights count more than others, citing American values to discount certain social and economic rights. Under international law, both are wrong. Human rights are universal, independent, and mutually reinforcing. This Commission, by statute, is mandated to assess China's compliance with international human rights standards. These standards are not determined by any party in China and not by any party in the United States. These standards, codified at the United Nations and widely adjudicated, apply to every person in every country and territory on Earth. We do a disservice to the people of China if the Commission's work is shaped by personal or political preferences rather than based on the universal human rights that the people of China are entitled to. Over 2 decades, the Commission has earned a reputation for objective and informative analysis, and let's keep it that way. On a personal note, this is my last hearing as co-chair of this commission, with my co-chairs, Senators Rubio and Merkley, along with Congressman Smith. We have sought to translate the Commission's expertise into advocacy and legislative impact. We helped get into law the Hong Kong Autonomy Act, the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, the Protect Hong Kong Act, the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, and the Tibetan Policy and Support Act. I give special mention to the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which was the product of Commission staff research that led to a report, a hearing, legislation, and then law. I propose it as a model both for how the Commission can be effective and how to craft robust human rights policy. I hope to be able to continue to serve on this Commission and to work on a bipartisan basis to promote human rights in China. Lastly, none of this would be possible without the hardworking, nonpartisan staff of the Commission. They are experts in the field and committed to both the cause of human rights and to the accuracy in reporting, which has made the Commission's work so respected. I cannot thank them enough. Like the Chair, one staffer I will mention by name is Judy Wright. She's retiring after 20 years at the Commission, and many before that in the House. As Director of Administration, she has made everything possible. We will miss her. I wish her a well-deserved and fulfilling retirement. I also want to acknowledge our lead staffer in the House, Todd Stein, who I have worked with nobody who knows more about China, who is more fluent on human rights law, who cares more deeply about this issue than him. And it has really been a privilege and an honor to work alongside of him, and we're going to continue to work together on this issue for many years to come. And again, as we're waiting for Speaker Pelosi to arrive, let me just say that I want to pay a special tribute to her. You know, she reminds us all the time, even when it's inconvenient, about how important focusing on human rights is. And with regard to human rights in China, she reminds us that if we don't have the courage and the guts to speak out against human rights abuses in China, then we don't have the moral authority to speak out against human rights abuses anywhere on this planet. The legislation that both of us have pointed out that have been a product of this commission would not have become law unless it was for the leadership of Speaker Pelosi in the House. And I cannot thank her for her commitment. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and to their recommendations for how this commission, the Congress, and the United States government can best advocate for the universal rights of the people of China. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair McGovern, and I look forward to, hopefully we'll be continuing to work together, though in different roles shortly. And Congressman Tom Suozzi is with us from New York, and he is retiring from Congress, and we've really appreciated your service on this commission and all the other excellent work you've done while serving in the House of Representatives. And would you like to share any opening comments?
Yeah, Senator, thank you very much for your leadership of this commission. We're very grateful to you for your professionalism and the great work that you've done over the past couple of years. It's been a great honor to serve with you and with Chairman McGovern, who's been involved in human rights issues for so many decades, as well as Congressman Smith, who's I'm sure joining us either electronically or will be joining us in person soon. And of course, such a great honor to follow in the footsteps of someone like Speaker Pelosi, who's really been a leader on human rights issues for such a long time. As I look back at the 20-year anniversary of this commission, I just want to quickly mention 4 dates: 1972, 1989, 2001, and 2022. 1972 is when Nixon first went to China, and at that time we thought the more that China was exposed to the United States and our way of life and the West as a whole, to democracy and to capitalism, the more that they'd become like us. We know today that that just simply hasn't happened. 1989, Tiananmen Square, we thought, wow, maybe something's going to happen here. Maybe people are really waking up to the realities of human rights abuses in China, and the people are rising up, and we saw that revolution crushed in that massacre, but people were paying more attention than before. 2001 and 2002 is when China joined the WTO. Globalism was this new idea, and we're going to say we could really benefit from China participating in the world economy. They can uplift their quality of life, they can participate in the world economy, and we can get cheaper goods in the process. Wow, what a great opportunity. And maybe they'll finally wake up to their human rights abuses and become more like the West in recognizing that they have to address human rights concerns. And that's when this organization was set up soon after China joined the WTO. But today, 2022, things couldn't be worse than they are. We see what's happening to the Uyghurs. We see what's continued to happen with the Tibetans, the repression in Hong Kong, the saber rattling in Taiwan, and so much more. And this commission plays such an important role here in the United States and on the world stage in trying to call to the world's attention these human rights abuses. We know this well because we look at it, because of the great work our staff does, the research that's done, the hearings that we hold, the experts that we listen to, like we'll listen to today. But the world doesn't really realize how bad things are in China. And, as the chair of the Uyghur Caucus, I'm particularly interested and aggrieved by the way that the Uyghurs are treated. But all the different human rights abuses that I've mentioned continue to go on every day. And we have to recognize that we're going to have to pay more for our jeans and T-shirts, but that's okay, because we have to hold China accountable for the human rights abuses that exist. And I look forward to the work that this committee continues to do in the future. And I'm excited to hear Speaker Pelosi as she comes to us as we celebrate, and thank her again for her leadership. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We are absolutely delighted to welcome the Speaker of the House. Madam Speaker, you have missed the accolades that we've been pouring forth really, recognizing that you were instrumental in the creation of this commission and have been a champion for human rights, particularly regarding China throughout these decades. We've so appreciated that leadership, that important fight for human rights across the world, and particularly in China. And we are honored that you've come to share with us some comments today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your great leadership of the committee. Your values, your strategic thinking, and all the rest are invaluable to the cause. And I thank you and recognize that. I'm glad to be here with Mr. McGovern in the House. We call him our spiritual leader, whether we're going to Tibet or wherever in China to make the case. And Mr. Swazi, thank you for your leadership. We'll miss you here, but you took this on so seriously, and I really appreciate that. And to your witnesses here today, welcome and thank you for your courage. I was a witness at the first meeting of this commission. I was a brand new whip of the House. I had just been sworn in as whip of the House. So it was the first testimony I ever gave as a member of the leadership. And today, this will be the last testimony I will give as a member of the leadership, but not my last comment on human rights in China. In the interest of time, I will stick with my remarks, but there's just so much to be said about this subject and how we could have done better as a nation since Tiananmen Square to avoid the situation we're in now. I see that they handed me this. China says it has taken U.S. semiconductor rules to the WTO. Imagine that. When I invited the chairman of the People's Congress to the Capitol, they had hosted us in China, then we were reciprocating. I said, I'm really sorry to bring up the fact on your first visit here of that China is violating, it was announced that day, they were dumping rubber into the U.S. And I said, I hate to begin the meeting this way, but you shouldn't be doing that, and I can't ignore that fact. And the chairman of the commission, he had his chair of this committee and that committee of the People's Congress, a very distinguished group, and they said, well, we all agree that when we joined the WTO, they said we didn't have to obey that rule. So that was how they came into the WTO. I'll get on to that now. But I thank the co-chair, Mr. McGovern. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Merkley, Chairman Merkley, for yours. It's an honor to again join the Congressional-Executive Commission on China as we mark 20 years of tireless work on human rights. Seems like it went by like that. It's fitting that we do so just days after UN Human Rights Day, marking the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Sitting here, again, I recall that first meeting I talked about. In my remarks, I made clear we must not abandon human rights for economic opportunity in China. As we gather today, our concerns remain just as salient and strong. So I'm grateful to all of you, to the CECC for organizing, the CECC for organizing this timely hearing. CECC at 20, 2 decades of human rights abuse and defense in China. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman Merkley, Chairman, Co-Chair McGovern, Congressman Chris Smith. In a bipartisan way, we've worked on this issue for a long time. And thank you, Mr. Swazi, for your leadership. You all have honored the long, bipartisan, bicameral tradition of the CECC, the foundation of its remarkable success and lasting impact on policy. This has always been bipartisan, and that is so much the beauty of it. Excuse me. Let us salute the Biden administration for strengthening your work, appointing executive branch commissioners for the first time since 2014. Thank you, Mr. President. As we all know, the commission was established as the People's Republic of China acceded to the World Trade Organization. In 2000, I took to the House floor to urge my colleagues to block China from the WTO, arguing that we should not put deals ahead of ideals. Because as the world's strongest economy, America has a moral duty to link our trade relations with human rights. I just told you how casual and cavalier the Chinese were about obeying the rules of the WTO. However, there were those who argued that Beijing's inclusion in international business institutions would bring a wave of reform and progress. In doing so, corporate America and its allies in the United States government and our government gave China a blank check, letting big businesses prosper from China's abuses, disadvantaging America's small business and America's workforce. Mr. Chairman, the U.S.-China Business Council, which was a council that at the time we were starting this fight in 30 years ago, after Tiananmen had been in existence for over 70 years, and they were getting pushed out of the trade situation by corporate America, who was in there for insurance and finance and all that. But our products were not giving access to China unless we gave them designs, and that still wasn't access to their market, but making them competitors on the world scene. So it's been so disadvantaging, as I said, small businesses and America's workforce, and simply hoping that China would change its behavior on human rights. But many of us knew that the world has since witnessed this approach was fated to fail. As we reevaluate the last 20 years, it's clear that delinking trade and human rights has not improved our trade relationship. Just think of this, my colleagues. When we were starting this discussion following Tiananmen Square, the China-U.S. trade deficit, their advantage in the trade was $6 billion a year. I thought for $6 billion, we can free the prisoners at Tiananmen Square, we can gain access to their markets, we can stop their proliferation of dangerous weapons that contribute to weapons of mass destruction, delivery systems, and the rest, for $6 billion a year. Now, it is more than $6 billion a week. A week. And look what is happening in human rights at the same time. At the same time, the CCP's exploitative labor practice create unfair competition for American business and workers, prison labor, and it's a bad deal for American businesses too, subjecting themselves to intellectual property theft and access to Chinese markets. As I mentioned, you want to manufacture in China, you have to give them your designs. They no longer need you. They have your intellectual property. And then they say, but you can't sell in our market. We have your designs, we can sell in our market. As I mentioned before, we can now compete globally. So, meanwhile, in terms of human rights and the rule of law over the last 20 years, the more things change, the more they are the same. In the 1990s, we fought against Beijing's use of prison labor. Harry Wu, so many other leaders made big sacrifices in documenting the use of prison labor. Now we're combating the use of forced Uyghur labor in concentration camps. Meanwhile, the world has witnessed the PRC's decades-long campaign of terror and repression in order to achieve total coercive control. First, aggression against the culture, not first, but from the aggression against culture, religion, and language of Tibet, which we witnessed when we visited there. The president of China had said to me when I complained to him with Dianne Feinstein about what they're doing in Tibet, he said, go see for yourself. We've done great things in Tibet. I said, well, thank you for that, because I've been trying for 25 years to get a visa to go to Tibet. But now that you're asking us to go see for ourselves, we went, and that's when Mr. McGovern was our spiritual leader on that trip. So Tibet, and to crushing of Hong Kong's autonomy and civil rights, what they're doing in Hong Kong, really, to intimidating the people of Taiwan, the jailing of dissidents like Jimmy Lai, Joshua Wong, Ilham Tohti, and of course, for such a long time now, the Panchen Lama. One of the most sinister forms of torture for repressors is to tell the imprisoned, nobody even knows you're here or why you're here. So why don't you just confess to what we want you to confess to? But that's not true. When the Commission's prisoner database, with that, we have made it clear to the CCP and to the world that America not only knows, remembers, and will call it to the attention. Make no mistake, if we don't speak out for human rights in China because of economic reasons, we lose all moral authority to talk about human rights any place in the world. That's why, led by the efforts here in the CECC, the Congress has taken bold, bipartisan action to bolster the defense of human rights in China. Our Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act will harness America's economic might to combat the genocide of the Uyghurs. Our Tibet Policy and Support Act makes clear America's commitment to the political rights of the Tibetan people. Our Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act sent a strong message of support to the courageous protesters marching for freedom. And with our CHIPS and Science, we are investing in American workers and American industry, ensuring we remain competitive with China, reducing our dependence on their factors of protection for us to compete with them. With this, President Biden asserted our independence. As we engage in this retrospective today, we must remain vigilant against putting deals ahead of ideals, business interests at the expense of basic rights, a trend many of us saw developing more than 2 decades ago, really, since Tiananmen Square. And let us be unequivocally clear, America must defend all human rights. As you made clear in your statement earlier, I could hear what you all were saying, even though I wasn't in the room. We cannot and we must not discriminate. It is my hope that the Commission will continue to lead the charge now and for 20 years more to come. Thank you again to the CECC for the opportunity to participate today. And now I yield back to the distinguished co-chair, Mr. McGovern, with gratitude to all of you who are participating today.
Madam Speaker.